These are some of my criticisms towards the Game Awards nominations. This list is undoubtedly will be nitpicky, but I think this could make for a better experience with the Game Awards thing. Also, I am aware and watched Alana Pierce's video about the matter, and I highly recommend people to watch that video for context of how the Game Awards decides their nominees for each category. I'll link the video to that, but in short, it's a huge mess. So here are my criticisms for TGA to make it better. In no particular order, let's start. It's probably best to discuss this with the method of how TGA decides which games should get nominated for each category. Listed in the Game Awards website are the juries that mostly dictates the games to be nominated. The juries are mostly just huge gaming outlets like GameSpot, IGN, PC Gamer, Polygon, and so on and so forth, up to different outlets from different countries. To illustrate the scale even more, Indonesia had 3 different outlets representing Indonesia that became juries for these Game Awards. So far, from what was listed in the website, everything seems normal. However, the system on how the Game Awards tally the nominations that was voted is that it's a huge ballot. Each jury gets to vote for one game to present as their quote-unquote best of each category, and then tally them up with the most votes, becoming a nominee for the Game Awards. So like, for example, if IGN's best RPG is Expedition 33, they voted for Expedition 33, and there is one vote for the best RPG. Where if other juries also voted for Expedition 33 enough times, Expedition 33 will get nominated for best RPG category, which they did. This goes to every other categories, and it is stated that the juries in the list do not talk to other juries, which leads to a lot of the same game nominated for different things if they get popular enough. Expedition 33 broke the record for the game with most nominations in the history of the Game Awards, which is impressive, and I highly respect the game for that, because, well, they deserve it. However, on the other hand, the voting system of the Game Awards left the nominations for other categories to have stray nominations that either didn't deserve it, but most importantly, they should have been invalid to be nominated. One of the main examples of this is with the Best Fighting Game category. This category does have a history of really bad nomination choices, like for example, Sifu being in this category, but this time, there's literally one game that was valid to be in the nomination, which is Fatal Fury City of the Wolves. The others are either Legacy Collection bundles, an early access game, or an old game that wasn't released this year. Fighting games are admittedly difficult to compile and rank because there's not much fighting games released yearly, unlike most other yearly titles. Other than the fact that designing multiple characters for that fighting game is required but takes a lot of time, it is mainly that fighting games are better if they sustain the live service model, where they sustain the game for a lot of time with balance updates and patches alongside the eventual addition of new characters to play as. It is better for both the online casual community and the FGC community. I'll say it is better to sustain that until either the devs want to reinvent the wheel or if there is a new story to be told within each fighting game franchise. That being said, I do not think the Game Awards should be nominating 2 Legacy Collection bundles, an incomplete game, and an old title that wasn't released this year, just because they have the backings of already being a huge name in the gaming industry. The problem here is that you could have made slots for other fighting game titles that are not that huge to begin with. This year alone, you could make arguments about nominating the new Bleach fighting game, Rebirth of Souls, or even the Hunter x Hunter Nen Impact game. There apparently is also an Ys vs Trails in the Sky fighting game, just released worldwide this year, although that is a worldwide port of an old game as well. What I'm trying to say with this is that this nomination is definitely a result of quote-unquote big names go nominated automatically, while they can let other proper fighting game titles go in the spotlight for a change. Admittedly, the examples that I've made have problems within their games themselves, but these titles are better candidates for awards for games this year than a bundle of games being ported that was bundled this year. Heck, if we're going by that logic, Tekken 3 should be nominated as well. Does it make sense to you? Because it doesn't for me. This problem is also present in other categories as well, like the best mobile game category, but this time it's because of Wuthering Waves being nominated. Okay, this might be a flimsy take, as Wuthering Waves is actually one of the best gacha games to exist, is still ongoing, and I highly respect Kuro's direction for the game. But Wuthering Waves was released in 2024. Yeah, you can argue that mobile games are live service games, and you can dictate the game on how it performs in the respective year when they are great that they deserve the nomination. It's practically why Genshin Impact had been nominated for Best Mobile Game for 3 years in a row. But again, it's sad that Wuthering Waves being nominated could possibly shove other mobile games that are released this year that at least deserve the mention. Some of which that I can mention are Stella Sora, which definitely has its glaring flaw in the monetization, but it has its charm with its roguelite gameplay. Chaos Zero Nightmare, with its mix of Darkest Dungeon and Slay the Spire gameplay that bursts a really engaging card game, and also Duet Night Abyss, which is somewhat of a Warframe-like game with pretty much derivative setting, but executes well on both story, gameplay, and the removal of character gacha system. But of course, I couldn't mention a mobile gacha game without mentioning the absolute brilliance of Uma Musume Pretty Derby. Needless to say, that's my personal vote on this category. But the point here is that the Game Awards can be a platform for games that are released that year to be in the spotlight for once, when people actually talk about those games that are nominated. The games that fit the criteria and deserves the spotlight are unfortunately being shafted for popular name titles that didn't fit the criteria at all. I know with how this goes with the ballot vote system they use, there's basically no rules for the nominations. It's a popularity contest at the end of the day, and that ultimately this whole thing doesn't really matter at all. This won't change what my favorite games were. This whole thing doesn't really matter. But I do think some sort of moderation from the Game Awards could make the selection of nominees a lot better. I do think while tallying the ballot results, some moderations from the Game Awards should verify if the game that are voted to be nominated by the juries are fit for the criteria of each category and should be released this year. Like for example, Virtua Fighter 5 isn't a game released in 2025. So even if Virtua Fighter 5 was voted by some juries, either it should be void or let the jury vote again for a different game, presumably the ones that are valid. Or for another alternative, you could have the Steam Awards as an example. When you're voting for a category in the Steam Awards, Steam would give some recommendations that Steam would see fit into that category, including the year of the release. The list would be taken from the games that you have played this year, and also a recommendation sorted by popularity of that category. This way, juries will have a slightly better choice of games to vote for each category, which hopefully eliminates the amount of stray nominees that didn't fit the category and didn't deserve it, but also give games that are released that year that either do deserve the recognition or needed the spotlight. Another thing that may happen from the lack of moderation or verification is the chances that some game devs don't feel like they deserve to be nominated, but nominated either way. This is a really niche and rare case that apparently happened to this year's Game Awards. So for those who don't know, this happened in the category Best Debut Indie Game, in which Megabonk got nominated for it. Personally, I haven't even seen how this game plays, but the consensus is that people really like that game, so it is deserving of the Best Debut Indie Game category. However, the developer did not think so, so what happened is that they pulled out of the competition as they admit that Megabonk isn't their first game or debut title. Jeff Keighley and the Game Awards team honored that and removed Megabonk from the list of nominees for the Best Debut Indie Game category. I know this is such a nitpicky criticism from my end, but I think this whole thing could have been straightened up way earlier and more professionally if there's a moderation team that filters and verifies the votes before it was announced for nomination. I do think that at least game devs should get an info beforehand that informs them that they got nominated to the Game Awards after the whole jury votes got tallied and they're eligible for nomination. I think this is just the best way to minimize the negative traction and some unprofessionalism shown for the Game Awards in announcing that Megabonk will be pulled out of the nominations. Because when I see that post, I just think this could have been avoided very easily. So more moderation on the nominations and information to the developers could really help. The most anticipated game category is going to be a throwaway award to GTA 6. even after GTA 6 finally release sometime in the future, the next popular game will be announced and that game will take it away. Admittedly, I don't have any good suggestions for this. Because of the ballot system for the jury voting, it's going to be GTA 6 until it is released, and it's not really a problem as well. But if I have to give a suggestion, I do think once a game won the most anticipated game, they should not be eligible to be nominated as most anticipated game again for the next following years. Because I do think this could make GTA 6 or any popular game like a tool to farm these awards every year for the worst case scenario. For all I know, GTA 6 will never come out, at least with the uncertainty of their release window. I hope the reasoning for this is that there's still a large amount of work to develop it, but at some point, it just become an unfair competition with other hardworking games. It's not an unhealthy competition by any means. I just think that they could have made a spotlight for other games that deserve the hype it needed. It's practically the same reasoning as my first point. If GTA 6 will enter every year, everyone will vote for GTA 6 every year. And as much as the award itself doesn't have much value to begin with, it gains traction to the game that were nominated and won. So GTA 6, by being the most anticipated game every year, just got a lot of traction and hype towards them while not actually needing them. And this, I think, goes hand in hand with the best performance category. Because for this year, there are 3 nominees representing Expedition 33 in the best performance category. Now, I am 100% sure these actors and actresses give their fullest in making Expedition 33 into what it is. I haven't consumed anything about Expedition 33 yet, I can't really judge. But the fact that 3 of the actors performing in Expedition 33 got nominated for Best Performance to represent Expedition 33 is telling enough that they did a great job on the game. But that being said, occupying literally half of the nomination slot for one game is pretty ridiculous, isn't it? The 2 additional slots that Expedition 33 occupied could have easily been served for other more deserving games as well. Like for example, Aaron Paul as Mecha Man in Dispatch. He really did a great job in Dispatch to make a very emotional and believable character. Or for another example, I think we forgot Metal Gear Solid Delta Snake Eater was also this year. Either that, or that the juries just collectively decided that remakes don't count. Either way, David Hayter had more voice acting performances added into the remake. It's not all ripped from the original PS2 game, so technically he should count into the nominations. In my opinion, the Game Awards should limit one actor to represent one game to be nominated, not to the degree of having 3 actors representing one game to fill in the nomination slots. A lot of other actors deserve it. For the rest of my nitpicks of the Game Awards, the gripes that I have on them are, but not limited to, a category's description that are either very vague on what it should represent, and some categories include multiple different genres that could have been better separated. Here are some of the compilations of small criticisms per category. I think this one is especially egregious because simulation games are not equal to strategy games. Strategy games do invoke some feelings of a simulation game, like for example, in Civilization, you simulate being a leader of a civilization, but ultimately it is still a strategy game to its core. In a game like Civilization, the main idea is that you strategize your resource yields and your military and many other systems in the game. By playing Civilization, you don't become Napoleon and follow what he did back historically. Hence, it's not a simulation game, even though some form of simulation is in play. When talking about simulation games, you think about amazingly accurate to life games like Farming Simulator, or my personal favorite, Satisfactory. While yes, they do have some sort of strategizing for what resources needed to be used for, what do you want to farm, etc. But that's not the main focus of those games. These games simulate what it feels to be a certain profession. A farmer for Farming Simulator, or an engineer for Satisfactory. The difference is the focus of these games are different, even though they invoke some feelings of simulation and strategy in these games, which is where I think people get jumbled on. So, in an ideal world, if there are enough potential nominees in the future, I'd rather that simulation games and strategy games get separated in a different category than being mixed into one. This is pretty much the same argument as before. Sports games and racing games tend to be mixed into one category, but they generally invoke a different kind of game. Although I would say for this particular category, it's understandable that racing games are being combined with sports when the racing game is like a super realistic car simulator game like Gran Turismo or Forza Horizon. There's an actual sports scene revolving around race cars in different racetracks and techniques, so it fits to be a sports game. But it doesn't fit for Mario Kart or Sonic Crossworld Racing, because these are kart racing games to a T. They don't make their games to simulate realistic car racing sports, they are just racing games. So, as best as we could, separate sports and racing games. Again, same point as before, separate shooter games with action games. Well, I agree that shooters are action games as well. There's no denying that shooters are action-packed, as well as some action hack-and-slash games. But I guess this is more of a case of more nomination chances for other more deserving games. Because splitting action and shooter games into two categories lead to more games being nominated for each category, and they instantly get a deserving recognition for being nominated. They don't necessarily have to win, because being nominated in itself is already an honor for those games and their developers. Action games by themselves can give more room for other action hack-and-slash games to be recognized by the community. And shooter games by themselves can give some more room for other shooter games that could possibly be non-AAA, because at this point, shooters are littered with AAA games doing the same formula over and over again. These last few categories that I had in mind are going to be lumped into one because they basically can be solved with the same solution that I had in mind. These categories are innovation in accessibility, games for impact, best VR/AR, content creator of the year, and the esports categories. I think I want to talk about games for impact first, because what the hell does this mean? To paraphrase the description from the Game Awards website, it reads, "For a thought-provoking game with a pro-social meaning or message." I get that the games nominated in this category had to have like an impactful story or message that they want to deliver. However, that kind of basically goes for basically any story-based games, or any game that had a really strong narrative. I don't think games are made without any reason. Any game should have had a message that the devs wanted to convey through that. So basically, any game with a good narrative could enter this category, which kinda gets mixed up with best narrative category. So, for all I know, this category has always been the category for games with political messages, which I think a lot of games already did as well, but I guess the intensity is the main focus here. So, what the hell is this category supposed to be? I'm genuinely curious about what it was supposed to be, because with the ballot voting system that they use, there's no rule to this. It could have been a category about games with impact in the title. So, what do I know? And because there's no rule to this, the ones that are getting nominated are titles that I do not even know existed. I guess I heard of South of Midnight because of their trailers in the Game Awards before, but I have never seen any gameplay of any of these games. So I wanted to vote for the games in this category, but because of the description is so vague, there's no rule on the ballot voting thing, and that the nominees are those games that I don't know, maybe advertising those nominees in the nomination voting page would help people get more info about those games so that they can vote according to their taste. As of right now, the nomination voting page is like this. For example, for Games for Impact, there are 5 nominees for this category, which are listed with the title of each game and also the studio/developers below them. This gives no information of each game at all. It's especially bad because for Games for Impact, you wanted to know what these games' messages are, if they are thought-provoking or not. So my suggestion would be to let us know in the same page on what these games are. Introduce us to these games before we actually vote for them in some sort of a paragraph synopsis of each game. Or better yet, give us like a snippet of both gameplay and story to introduce us to these games in video style. Any info could have worked wonders for these games. It is both beneficial to voters who wanted to vote for these games, and also for the game and the developers themselves, as giving more information could increase the interest for that particular game. Some people might actually like some small games that people don't really have their eyes on. So, introducing them to these games within the Game Awards is exactly what this award show is for, to celebrate and get more players to try more games that they are interested in. This introduction solution can be applied to other categories as well, like for example, innovation in accessibility. Not everyone actually plays the games that are nominated for that category, but if you introduce to us where the nomination of accessibilities are in the games that are nominated, we can judge by ourselves if these innovations in accessibilities are actually innovative and game-changing to the point where people with different disabilities or impairments can experience the same game as normal players would experience. Same goes to the best VR/AR category, and more so because of the limitation of a VR headset needed to play these VR games. Introduce to us what these VR games are, how they play in a playthrough style video, so that we can get a glimpse of what these games are, so that we can be comfortable to vote for the ones that we see looks good. It's probably more important for this category because one of the nominees is a Deadpool game, which I can guarantee you, your regular everyday person will default to voting for the Deadpool VR game because of its brand recognition alone. And while we're at it, this could also be applied to the esports categories and also the content creator category. Give us some clips of why these content creators are nominated and what their contribution is to the gaming content creator sphere. I only know of Moist Critical and Sakuramiko because they're practically celebrities at this point, but people still might not know who these creators are. A highlight of their content might be great to give us a view of who these guys are and what they do, so people can vote more objectively. Give us some clips of the esports games that are nominated, while also give us some top clips and plays that showcases the esports players that are nominated as well, to give us more context to the scene to people who are not familiar with them, so they can vote and judge more objectively. It definitely won't be 100% objective, but it is an effort to have a fair and serious look to the whole gaming sphere as well as some of their niches. So, with me writing this script and making this video, I do not expect the Game Awards to change according to my demands. I am just someone on the internet who plays games too much. I don't think this video will get much views anyways, but I also enjoy the Game Awards in their annual endeavor to gather everyone in different fandoms of game genres to celebrate what game has become. It was such a huge task that I can't discredit the Game Awards team and especially Jeff Keighley for their success in that endeavor. Of course, people can hate them for what other things they did, but well, the fact that they created something that gamers would go back to annually is great enough to think of it as a success. That being said, as I mentioned throughout this whole video, some criticism can still be made on the whole process itself to show more professionalism to the Game Awards. To summarize, add a layer of moderation in the ballot voting system that filter voted games whether or not they are eligible for the category or not. Check the year the voted game is released. Check if the game is a remaster or a compilation of old games, and check if the game is quote-unquote relevant in the year of the nomination, if the game deserves a spot in the category. With the same moderation theme, inform the game developers first before making an announcement of the nominations to ensure no developers have the need to pull out of the competition, just like the Megabonk case. Restrict some potential games to be voted again to prevent repeats, like for example GTA 6 for most anticipated game. Separate some categories that were combined, yet have no correlations with each other, like sim/strategy game, action and shooter games, and sports/racing. And finally, most importantly, give us more information on the nominated games on your website. The website could easily contain more paragraphs and a video to introduce to people voting what these games are, what their premises are, and why they're nominated to each category. As a closing to this video, I will display my votes on this year's awards on screen right now. If I have to explain, I just don't want to vote for Expedition 33 on any category that has Expedition 33, because they're gonna win anyway, so I'm gonna use this chance to promote other games by voting for those games instead. With all that being said, thank you for watching and have fun watching this year's Game Awards.